Assalamualaikum, welcome to the Learning Hub. Today our concern is about the performance of an IT infrastructure architecture, which also include in IT infrastructure building blocks. Performance is actually is a typical hygiene factors. Nobody notices a highly performance system, but when the system is not performing well enough, users quickly start complaining. What is perceived performance? Perceived performance refers to how quickly a system appears to perform its task. In general, people tend to overestimate their own patience. People tend to value predictability in performance. So when the performance of the system is fluctuating, when the system is not performing well, they remember that it is a bad experience. The user or we remember that we have a bad experience, even if the fluctuation is relatively rare or for the shorter time. So we have examples for the perceived performance, which is progress bar when we're copying an items in our system. So next is splash screen. Splash screen is the example of the word. When we open the word, it take a little bit of seconds or micro nanoseconds of the time. Next, performance during infrastructure design. Performance during infrastructure design for the performance ensure that the solution of is designed, implemented, and supported to meet the performance requirement. Performance include when the system is in a special states, it have falling parts, maintaining state, performing backups, and running the batch jobs. So calculating the performance of the system is the design in the design phase is extremely difficult. Next, we have benchmarking. Benchmarking uses a specific test programs to assess the relative performance of an infrastructure components. Often, computer hardwares like floating point operations per second, which are also known as flops. And next is million instructions per second, only useful for the comparing the raw speed of the parts of an infrastructure. Vendor experience. The best way to determine for the performance of any system or performance of a IT infrastructure is in design phase is by the vendor experience. Vendor experience, they have a lot of experience running their products for a longer time, for a long time, so we can it is the best way to determine the performance. Next is prototyping. Prototyping is also known as the proof of concept, POC, which to measure the performance of the system at an early stage. Prototyping include the hiring equipment from the suppliers, using database capacity at the vendor premises, and using the cloud computing resources. Focus on those parts of the system we have highest risk and early in the design processing. Next, we have user profiling. So when we predict the load of the new software systems of an on an IT infrastructure before the system is actually built, this is known as user profiling. User profiling is the estimation of the load or prediction of the load for a new software system. It is important to have a good indication of the expected uses of the system. We have to define the number of the persons or number of the users in the group of our new system. Then we have to create a list of the tasks that we have to perform for the new system. User performing and task, we have a table personas like data entry officer. Data entry officers, there are the number of users per person. Persona is 100. System task is to start the application. Next, we have infrastructure load. At the result of the system task is reach 100 MB data from send access frequency once a data. Next, we have user profiling infrastructure load. Data like infrastructure load for the data transportation from server to workstation in KBs. In kilobytes is per day. And next we have per second. Then data transport from workstation to server. Data records from SAN. Data return to SAN. Next, performance of the running system. Managing bottleneck. Bottleneck is the main traffic issue which any systems can handle or any system can. The performance of system is based on the performance of all its components and their interoperability of the various components. Every system, regardless of how well it works, have at least one consistent bottleneck that limits its performance. Performance testing. performance testing, we have load testing, stress testing, and endurance testing. There are three types of testing. Load testing is to show the system how perform under the expected load. We have expected load that we run on our system and check its performance. The next is stress testing. Stress testing is show how system reacts when it's under extreme load. Next, endurance testing show how system behave when the user is at the expected load for the longer period of the time. Load testing and stress testing is for not for the longer period, is for shorter period, but endurance testing is for the long period of the time. We have breakpoints and we have a graph here. We have response time and y-axis and number of stimulated user on stimulated user and x-axis. Then we have breakpoint where the performance of the system break. So that's it for today. Thank you.